about? Hi, everyone. Hi, Gavin.
Hey.
Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for coming. I know people are going to start rolling in now. So I am Tanya Janka, also known as She Hacks Purple. And today we're going to discuss Alice and Bob Learn Secure Coding with my friend Gavin. Gavin, will you introduce yourself?
Absolutely. First, thanks for having me on, Tanya. This has been fantastic. We vibe so well. I'm just worried that we're going to run out of time. So I'm Gavin Klondike. I am a principal security consultant. I specialize in application security, AI, and cloud. I focus primarily on offensive security, so usually hacking, usually pen testing. For almost a decade, I used to be on the leadership team for the AI Village at DEF CON, running demos and workshops. So it was kind of my job to explain to the community what all this AI stuff is. And this is before ChatGPT kind of took over the whole conversation. So I also run a YouTube channel called NetSec Explained, where I take the time to explain intermediate and advanced level network security concepts, some of which we're actually going to go over in this stream, which is fantastic. But it's funny, when we first started talking about hopping onto this live about your book, I thought I was going to be doing chapter 2. And then later we shifted it to be chapter 4. And I'm so glad we get to do chapter 4. There are so many things in here that I will not stop talking about. So this is going to be a fantastic chat. I'm looking forward to it.
Me too. Me too. I was so happy when you said yes. And then our pre-call where we couldn't stop talking, I'm like, this is going to be great.
Yeah, the 45-minute meeting that turned into 2.5 hours.
So for people that are on the stream that might be here because of Gavin instead of me, I'm Tanya Janka. So I have written multiple books about application security and secure coding. Those are my topics of choice. And this is the latest book, Alice and Bob Learn Secure Coding. And it's, I guess, 425 pages about how you can build secure software. I'm very passionate about this. I was a software developer for 17 years before I switched into briefly being a pen tester, figuring out that was totally the wrong job for me as an incredibly impatient person who's very extroverted and just wants to talk to everyone. And then I switched into securing software, so threat modeling, still breaking things sometimes, but still pair programming, code review, etc. Right? And then I started talking about it and I started writing about it. And then before you know it, I ended up as a secure coding trainer, which is what I'm doing right now. And some secret projects that I'll tell you more about as they develop. But for those of you watching, whether you're on Twitch, LinkedIn, or YouTube, if you put a comment on the video, it will show up for me and Gavin. And you can ask a question that way. You can ask a question at any point. We don't mind whatsoever. We'd love to hear from you. But Gavin and I have some thoughts of things that we wanted to talk about as we go through chapter 4. So chapter 4 starts on page 81. It's about 30 pages. There's questions at the back of the chapter we'll answer, but we kind of want to go through certain topics that we're really passionate about. Did you want to introduce the chapter, or should I introduce the chapter?
I can introduce it. So first, for those that are interested in commenting, feel free to ask questions, even if it's not related to the book. I mean, this is your opportunity to get access to Tanya and myself to talk about cybersecurity career stuff, application security stuff, corporate politics, and why security is so hard. That was actually one of the things that was kind of running through my head through a good chunk of this chapter. And I'll ask you about that later. But the chapter itself is kind of interesting because the way that Tanya broke up the book is the beginning 4 chapters, part of part 1, and it kind of covers what is secure coding, why do we need secure coding, and then chapter 4 is how do you know you achieve secure coding, right? So there isn't a answer key to all of this. It's just, how do you know you've done enough? And so this entire chapter covers, here are things that you need to look for, that you need to make sure that you cover, or at least enough information to start go and do your own research. You can also appear a little smarter in some of your cybersecurity meetings because you know about some of these topics. But it really tries to focus in on that. What is good enough security in the concept of secure coding?
Absolutely. I could not have said it better myself. Thank you. So the first section in the book, or in the chapter, I believe, is secure design. And Gavin, I'm pretty sure we're both going to agree on this. And audience, please comment if you don't agree so we can talk about it. But if you have a bad design, it doesn't matter how secure the code is that you wrote. If you have a bad plan, you're still going to get to a bad place. Yeah. You're like, that's
Exactly.
it. We agree.
I mean, I don't want to talk over you, but the thing that I really like about your book as a whole, but especially this chapter, is it's very approachable. And you kind of start off with these two stories. You have one for Alice, you have one for Bob, and they kind of go in the opposite directions. So for Bob, he's doing GRC, or governance, risk, and compliance, for those who aren't aware. And he's given like a massive 80-page document, architecture document, that he has to fill out. And it's daunting. Why are we doing so much for this architecture? Now, granted, every single one of us thinks that we have the most important job. But when you use somebody's time and hours, it's taken away from something else. This is where we need to start prioritizing effort. And if you kind of overtake that effort queue, now you don't have the time and attention to pay to other things. The three major constrictions that we got to work around, and this is really important for cybersecurity because there's a sliding scale between security and usability. But the three things that we really need to work around is time, money, and resources. And so if we're inundating our engineering team or our coding team with frivolous documentation or stuff that is important, but maybe not as important as some other things that probably need a little bit more priority, then that's stuff that's not getting worked on. Right. Alice, in the opposite direction, was kind of frustrated as part of a merger and acquisition. And she was trying to figure out, well, why do we need to re-standardize all of our stuff? The way that we operate works perfectly. But then she found out later that when it came audit time, having all of your ducks in a row ahead of time makes it so much easier.
It's true. I actually, so for those of you that don't know, I am Alice and I am Bob. So I was Bob until age 30 or 31, and then I became Alice, if that makes any sense, because I switched into a more of a management leadership role at that point.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember working on this team, and so I had joined a security team, and one of them had made the 80-page document, and it was a template that was 80 pages. So your final document would be 160 or more once you filled it out. And the other guy, who was not the boss, had made a 6-page template. And I'm like, I like Eric's better. And they're like, well, that's because you're a dirty little dev, right? And that's where you're in the security world now, and you have to like grow up. And I was like, no one's going to fill out your 80-page form. I'm sorry, but no one's going to do it. That's an entire project in itself. And he was like, people are going to do it because I'm the boss and I'm security and blah, blah, blah. And guess what happened? Guess whose document? Like, we ended up using the 6-page one. And on top of that, so both of the people on my team were smart, but one was more socially smart.
Mm-hmm.
And so he's like, it's 6 pages, but also it's an interview. And Tanya, you're going to go talk to them and fill out the 6 pages with them. And it's going to be an hour and a half. Then you're going to know the team. They're going to know they can come to you from now on. And we had 100% compliance.
See, that's so clever. Like that is so useful, because the security team, like we're usually isolated. Honestly, the dev team as well. And so they don't talk to each other, or when they do, it's usually a fight. So having a bridge like that really goes a long way.
Yeah, and I had been on the dev team and transferred onto the security team. So they already knew me. They're like, oh, it's just Tanya. It's not like the real security team. It's just, she's okay.
Right. She's not going to yell at us. Yeah.
Yeah, it helped me make a bridge between the two teams. And like, it was, we did not have a bridge before that, let's just say.
Fair enough. See, for me, I kind of started my career in network consulting. So I was doing the Cisco route switch kind of stuff. And so I always had to fill out change orders because we're doing uplifts, we're taking down entire networks. And so the change orders took hours and hours and hours. So I always had to fill out about 3 change orders a day. Actually, here's the project. It was a pain in the butt. So Monday, Wednesday, Friday night, we would take down the networks. We would do the change orders. I would be remote, but we would have helping hands at all of the local facilities. We had about 250 facilities that we needed to change over the course of a year. So it was a lot. Tuesday and Thursday and Monday morning, I had to fill out the change orders for those systems being taken down. Because once you start unplugging routers, alarms go off like crazy. So we had to fill out change orders. We had to notify the security team. We had to notify the network team that these changes were happening. And so it messes with your sleep schedule, having to do all that. So eventually I kind of worked with the team, and we were able to shrink the documentation down to, here's how much you need to know. This is going to be a repeat project. So just tag it as part of this project, and stuff's going to go down. So if you see those alerts, you'll know exactly why. And being able to have those conversations and actually bring people into the conversation helps so much. I cannot stress how much it helps, because nobody's surprised. Everybody's kind of on the same page, or at the very least, they know who to ask.
Yeah, I feel like as companies, I see more and more companies where they're doing this outsourcing, where they're like, oh, we'll just hire devs from some other company, but then we'll have management and other people here. And then there's this huge, not just cultural disconnect and time zone disconnect, but just there's not the trust built in the same way. And then it's like, why aren't things going well? And it's like, because you removed all the magical ingredients that we needed to like be a real team. Because you like separated them from us. Like, but there's actually a thing you and I had talked about a bit before about design paradigms. And you had some stories about companies you'd worked for before where they did things a little differently. Did you want to share a bit about that?
Yeah. The most secure companies that I've worked for have one way of doing things. And it is kind of a pain in the butt because it's very rigid. You have to do it this way. Otherwise, it's wrong. It doesn't matter if it's more secure. It doesn't matter if it's just as secure. It's either this way or it's wrong.
Yeah.
And
the paved road.
Yeah. But over time, I kind of realized that it saved a lot of time, because now you don't have to do code reviews. Now you don't have to have your developers, you don't have to worry about your developers writing their own crypto libraries. You don't have to worry about them doing stuff that they shouldn't be doing or non-standard stuff. You don't have to do a full code review. Your code reviews are a lot quicker. The systems they use are integrated and really, really strong environments, because you know exactly what's supposed to be where and when. And they're always doing code reviews on each other's stuff. So it at least goes through 2 senior devs before it gets pushed out to production. And so with that, once you build a system, it scales very well. So those are some of the most secure companies that I've worked for. I understand why not everybody does it, move fast and break things. But if you really want to get your security in line, you get your developers in line, this is kind of the way to do it. And actually, that reminds me, sorry, there's one more thing that I want to talk about. And this is a soft skill. So I picked this up from Simon Sinek. A lot of conflict really comes from just competing metrics. So if you look at how the developers are measured, it's how much code they get pushed out. But the security team is how much of that code is secure. So naturally, as developers are pushing out code, the security team has to reduce the amount of code that they're getting pushed out. So that's competing metrics. But if you can have a conversation, get on the same page, and start building out libraries and systems to make the friction easier for developers to get their code out, now you're working collaboratively instead of competitively. And so that really goes a long way. Of course, easier said than done, but it helps, especially in having conversations with upper management.
When you say competing metrics, I would say perverse incentives. Does that make sense?
Perverse incentives. Tell me about that.
So the incentive for a developer is to release as many features as possible. And then, but we'll say, oh, we take security seriously and security is important. But meanwhile, we are not incentivizing them to make the code secure in any way.
I see. Yeah.
And so we've incentivized them to make bad choices, essentially. right? And then
Yeah.
people are like, how dare that developer do blah? And I'm like, that's what you would do if you only get promoted, you only get raises for releasing new features. Why would you go half as fast and spend time to threat model and do all these other things that are quite frankly optional because you're a developer and you can do whatever you damn well want? Right?
Yeah,
Like,
who's going to say no? Like, it's not standard, it's not SOP, so we don't have to do it.
exactly. One of the stories in the book about Heidi. So if you look up, so Alice and Bob were characters that were created by mathematicians that invented cryptography to explain how cryptography worked to all of us normal folks that aren't mathematical geniuses. And A for Alice, B for Bob, like as variable names. And so like Alice wants to tell Bob a secret. How does Bob know that the secret's from Alice, etc.? And that is how I learned about cryptography in 1999 when I was still back in college. And all of this came out like almost 50 years ago. And there are many characters that are actually part of the Alice and Bob. There's like Heidi, Faith, etc. And so Heidi's the sneaky character. But this story is actually true, Gavin. I worked somewhere, and for every single app, we were supposed to fill out a form. But we had this, I was in the Canadian government, we had this system called, what is it called? GC Docs, Government of Canada Docs. And you could set the permissions so no one could read it. Okay. And so what my peer on another team was doing was Heidi, was never filling out any of the forms and would just say, oh, I filled it out, and send a link and lock it so no one could see it. And he told me this one day, like we're walking out of the building together, and I was like, oh my gosh, I have to do 2 of those tonight. I have to come back tonight and finish those, blah, blah, blah. And he's like, why do you fill them out? No one reads them. I'm like, what do you mean no one reads them? He's like, yeah, for the past couple of years, I've just been locking the file, and only twice have they ever said, hey, I can't read it. And I'm like, what did you do? And he's like, I just panicked and like filled it out as fast as I could. But I've only ever had to fill out 2, and you've had to do like 100. And I was just like, first of all, how dare you?
Right. Yeah. First off, rude. Second, how do I do that?
Right. And then I was in this thing of, do I lie? Because Gavin, I will always be caught. I am a terrible liar. Yeah. People could tell. They could tell immediately. It's all over my face. And so I went to the team for the next one I filled out, and I was like, I saw you haven't accessed it. Why haven't you read it? They're like, we don't have time. I'm like, I'm not filling out another form until you read that one and you give me constructive criticism. And I just started like whipping them. And I was like, you're going to give me feedback and help me change my design and improve it. And this is going to be a collaborative process, or I'm not doing it anymore. And suddenly I didn't have to fill out as many forms.
I was going to say, I like how you kind of took the Hermione Granger approach, where it's like, I'm filling out these anyways, but now you have to read them. If it's going to be my burden, it's going to be your burden too.
Well, I didn't want to tell on him because then he wouldn't trust me anymore. But as like a rule follower, I did want to tell, but I didn't. And I was just like, I'm in this. I've had a lot of bad experiences with GRC. So when I wrote the book, one of my technical editors, Fab, who's wonderful and amazing, and I really value his feedback, he was like, Tanya, you are hating on GRC in every single chapter. Oof. They're not that bad. I'm like, I have never once in my entire career had a good professional interaction with GRC. Like all of the bad stories, they all happened to me. All the good stories did not happen to me. And so what I did was I put a call out onto my social media and ended up meeting with several different GRC people, and they gave me stories of how they had helped. And then I used those so I could have, because I know that not every GRC team is crappy. I just have had bad luck. I know that they offer value to the organization or they wouldn't exist, right? Like it's not like GRC magically existed for no reason. There's a reason. I just, as a developer, had bad experiences. And so I tried to make it more even, and like Fab's like, this is much better. He's like, you're usually such a positive person, but I feel like you have like a GRC hate club. I'm like,
you're gonna hate me. I have good experiences with GRC.
I've had lots of good friends that work in GRC that are lovely humans, but maybe again, it's perverse incentives.
Yeah. That's a good question. Probably because you were working for the government too. Government's a very different kind of beast. But that reminds me, actually. So for those who are tuning in, if you're not in security right now and you want to get in, take a look at GRC. GRC is fairly easy to get into. It's not as technical as some of the more engineering type work, and it is kind of underrated. I did GRC work just out the gate for a little bit. It wasn't too bad. And actually, what I did was third-party risk assessments. And what's really cool about doing third-party risk assessments is you get to see how all the companies operate, like how they do their security. So you get to see common patterns. You get to, it's not fun. I'm going to say that up front. I'm not going to lie. It is not fun. But it's kind of like the Karate Kid, like wax on, wax off. Like the more you experience how different companies operate, the more you get familiar with SOC 2 reports, the more you read pen test reports, you start to see the commonalities. And now you know the things to look for, whether you want to go into the blue team side or the red team side, or even stay in the GRC area. You get exposed to a lot, which is really cool.
I find one of the things that's complicated with information security is that there's so many different jobs.
Yes.
And you join and you don't even know what they all are. So you don't even understand which one's the best one for you. And I became a pen tester because I thought there were only 3 jobs. I thought there was the GRC guy, there was the firewall guy, and then there was the pen tester guy. And that guy made the most sense for what guy I was going to be. And I was just like, there's 3 choices. That's the one, I guess. Cause I'm not a network person. I'm a software person. And then I'm like, GRC, I haven't had good experiences with them. So I don't want to be on that team. So I'm like, I guess I do this now. And then I was the most terrible pen tester, Gavin. I remember my boss saying, like, your pen tests take like 14 days, 18 days. What are you doing over there? And I was like, let's do a threat model. Let's pair a program together. I'll help you fix all the bugs.
Yeah.
I would just do application security with them. I'm like, let me give you some security requirements. This will be so much better. And he's like, why are you showing up like 3 months early for their pen test? Like their app's not ready. I'm like, no, they need me now so I can review their design with them. He's like, no, what are you doing? And so then one of my mentors sat me down and he's like, Tanya, there's a job and it's called application security. And that's what you keep trying to do at people. And so when I would do consulting, I would say to them, do you want a pen test or a security assessment? And they're like, what is that? And then I would just describe like doing an AppSec program with them. And they're like, we want that. And I'm like, great. I'd write pen test at the top and I'd come in and do what I put in the scope. And then it was okay because I'd set it up front, but like clients were asking for me instead of the other pen testers. And he's just like, what is wrong with you?
No, I think that's great. A lot of stories that come to mind that branch off of that, but I'm actually kind of in the middle of trying to restart my channel. I'm finishing up a video talking about things to look for in a pen test, but I've had to talk to so many, I'll say, accidental security managers who they're then told they need to get a pen test. And so they'll talk to me in my company and they say, hey, I need a pen test. I'm like, okay, what do you need pen test? What type of pen test? Like, what do you mean, what type of pen test? I just need a pen test. I was like, are we doing a network pen test? Are we doing an application pen test? Are we doing a cloud pen test? Internal network, external network? They have no idea. And there's just so much in this space that it's difficult to narrow things down and say, I need this, I don't need that. Like even the security assessment, I had a pen test for a company and they really wanted a security assessment. And they said, hey, how come you guys aren't doing a threat model or any of this stuff? And it's like, oh, well, this is what we do for our pen test. So like, oh, well, we want something different. I'm like, okay, so let's walk through and actually have a conversation instead of say like, I want this or I want that. Right. And being able to have that conversation, I think goes a really long way. It's also part of why I created my channel, is so that I can educate people on what these terms are, because this is stuff you and I do every day, but unless you do it every day, you're down in the trenches, boots on the ground kind of thing, you might not know some of these key differences or even what's available. People hadn't heard of cloud pen testing till I had conversations with them. So it was a huge thing.
And for those that don't know, you can go to his channel by going to YouTube /C for channel /NetSec like network security explained, and it's just on the screen there. So if you are listening and not really watching, you can go back to the whatever minute we're at, minute 25, and you can get this, or just look up Gavin Klondike and you'll probably find that. If you can't spell NetSec explained because NetSec might be confusing, that's okay. But
I always misspell it. It's very embarrassing. I hope nobody sees my search history.
yeah, sometimes I misspell AppSec as well. When I dictate it, the dictation thinks I'm saying abscess. You don't.
Oh, much better than what I get.
You don't want to Google abscess. You don't want to Google image search that for sure.
Especially if you're squeamish.
No. When we talk about secure design, Gavin, how much is enough?
If I was to, all right, so when I write my reports, I kind of have the same idea as like, if I bump into an executive in a hallway, like how would I explain this, right? Not a huge lengthy verbose thing, but just, hey, how do we know that we're doing enough? A lot of it really comes down to what are you trying to protect against? So who are the threat actors? What are the threat scenarios? What's your threat model? And it doesn't need to be like a formal thing either. It's just, hey, we're worried about random script kiddie hackers on the internet, or we're worried about nation states, or we're worried about competitors. I'm shipping a piece of hardware back to a customer, and they were worried about competitors. They said, hey, what if somebody got a hold of our stuff?
Yeah.
What could they do? And so that was kind of the threat model that we entertained in the pen test, which was pretty fun. What are you trying to protect? And then what are the costs of keeping things secure versus leaving things a little looser? And that's not because we don't want stuff to be completely secure. We do. It's just, again, time, money, resources. You don't have all of them. I think it was one of the security executives over at Sony like forever ago. He basically said, I'm not going to spend $9 million securing a $1 million system. Like it just financially, that doesn't make sense. And unfortunately, we have to deal with the business constraints. It's the same thing with IT. It's the same thing with any other, what I would call a cost department, right? They don't generate revenue for the company. Everything has to be business focused. So you're not just using technical solutions for technical problems. You're using technical solutions for business problems. And that's how you get that in getting administrative or manager buy-in.
I need to put my ex-government employee hat on for a moment.
Yeah.
So we don't want to spend $9 million securing a thing that's $1 million unless human lives are at stake. There's intellectual property that is going to be incredibly valuable, but it isn't yet. There's nation state secrets involved. We're potentially preventing terrorism, stuff like that, right? So like you said, the thing that we're protecting needs to have a certain value. But again, like if there's someone was asking me, he's like, can you do a pen test on my daughter's little app that she made this little, I call it a houseplant app. So an app where it's sort of just for you or for your team, and you sort of use it internally, like a houseplant. It's just for you, right? And I was like, so your daughter spent 4 hours making this, and you think that I'm going to spend like a week of my time professional, like doing my professional whatever. And I'm like, do you know how much that would cost? And he's like, never mind, asking was stupid. And I'm like, well, it's just, what is the data that she has? Is that worth protecting? Like, and I guess she's selling access to kids in her class, and she's 14. And I mean, I'm like, you should think about what you're protecting and how much she's selling it for, and can go from there, right?
And what you're collecting. If she's collecting their info, then that's probably not something she wants to take on as a liability. But I'm sure it's innocent. I'm sure it's something that's so much easier to work with, and so she doesn't need like a whole threat model around her stuff.
It ended up being very not sensitive information after we talked about it.
Yeah.
So there's no, like, people weren't putting personally identifiable information in it. It was more that it was distributing information to them. But I feel like there are people all over the internet I went to a barbecue yesterday because it was Canada Day, and I live in Canada, and that's the accent you're hearing in case you're like, gosh, she's weird. Gosh, she's a weird American. That is why, because I am not one. Sometimes I get that in Europe. They're like, you're such a strange American.
Surprise.
I'm like, what does that mean? But anyway, and someone was explaining how he wants to vibe code, 25 different things. And I'm like, maybe you should stick to the problem space that you fully, truly understand so that you know, because he was talking about making an app that would give legal advice. I'm like, do you understand the risk involved? And he's like, I'll put some disclaimers. And I'm like,
also don't do that.
I'm like, well, as a person who is not qualified to give legal advice, I want to give you some risk advice that you should not do that. But I'm at a barbecue. I'm like chilling. Like, this is not my job. This is a friend of a friend of a friend. And I'm like, I wouldn't take on that risk. Maybe you should stay in like the architectural space, which is the thing you're really good at. And he's like, yeah, maybe I will. And I'm like, don't give legal advice.
I always say, I'm not a lawyer. I'm not your lawyer. You should definitely talk to one. Because
I ended up giving him one of my lawyer's contact info. That's how the conversation ended. I was like, you should talk to this person, and she will be like, but anyway, I kind of want it because there's no question. So people listening, you can ask me and Gavin questions. You ask us questions by putting a comment on the video. And that will show up for us on the StreamYard app that we're using, and then we can respond to you. So anyone can ask a question. You can ask a question about what we're talking about. You can ask a question about another topic in the book. You can ask a question about application security or network security because Gavin's here and I'll make him answer it. You can ask a question about what it's like to come work in InfoSec or how you could get a job, or maybe other IT questions. We could do our best.
You guys should ask Tanya what it's like to be mistaken as an American in Europe.
Well, they're just like, oh, you're so weird. Anyway.
It's funny because I actually recently did my own Europe trip, and it's the stereotype for Americans especially, and I'm sure it maps to Canadians. Canadians, the stereotype is that you guys are so nice, and you really, really are.
Polite.
Very, across the board, just everything. Very.
They take our passports away if we go out of the country and we're impolite, and we're never allowed to leave again.
That explains a lot. Explains a lot. No, so the company that I was working for up until recently was actually based out of Canada. And so I would go there every so often just to pop in, visit, say hi, definitely not do any work, but just social. And so everybody, it's crazy. Like, you'll get road rage incidents. Somebody will honk their horn, like run you off the road, and they'll be like, have a nice day. It's so weird. Canada's great. Have a chance to visit if you haven't. But the stereotype for Americans is we're very friendly and we're very loud. You'll hear us before you see us. And unfortunately, I am both. And I fit that stereotype way too well. So I made a lot of friends.
I think making a lot of friends sounds like a pretty good outcome. Really? It doesn't sound bad at all. No, like, I have too many friends. It's terrible. Everywhere I go, they all know me. Oh,
I know. It's weird because I get torn between I don't want to match a stereotype, but at the same time, it's kind of working for me. You know what I mean?
I say take it.
Yeah, exactly. Shifting gears real quick, because in this same section is one of my favorite topics, and that's threat modeling. Threat modeling. I got to tell you how I got started in threat modeling. So I started consulting before I could drink, right? I got my 4-year degree in 2.5 years. I started consulting before I could drink, and I just pick up stuff. I'm not an expert in any one thing. I'm an expert in becoming an expert. And so I was working for a company, and we were doing pen testing. That's what we were doing, right? But again, one of our customers basically said, hey, we actually want a full threat model, and then we want you to do the assessment based on that threat model and work with our development team. And so they basically said, Gavin, you're up, have fun. And so I had to learn threat modeling. Is that Dallas? Dallas, nice. Thanks for hopping on. I actually used to work with Dallas. That was fun. But yeah, so they just threw me onto a project. And so I thought threat modeling was going to be incredibly boring, incredibly tedious. And the more I dug into it, there is a lot with threat modeling that you can do. And it actually makes my pen testing a lot better as well, because once you have an idea of how an application works and where the trust boundaries are, it makes it so much easier to know where the pressure points are. And so now I don't have to look at your entire application and just figure stuff out. I just look right for those pressure points. But threat model, if I could save $1 million in your security budget every year, it would be with threat modeling. Like, the more you can shift issues to the left, the closer to, ideally threat modeling should be done before a single line of code is written. And so the more you can shift security responsibilities that way, the easier it is to handle the entire life cycle securely. And then you don't have to go through some of the same rigmarole that you do once you just do the build, fix, break stuff, rebuild, right? Okay. So definitely do threat modeling. And I really appreciate you called out Adam Shostak's like 4-question threat models, because it doesn't have to be formal. If you want formal, we can talk formal, but it's basically, what are you trying to do? What can go wrong? How do you fix it? And did you do a good job in fixing that? Like, that's the 4 questions. And as long as you're doing those 4, you're threat modeling. I think Adam Shostak has the like world's shortest threat modeling course, and it's just a few minutes long on his YouTube channel. I have a video on threat modeling, which is just Stride threat modeling in 20 minutes. And it goes over a little bit more of a formal process. Fantastic.
This is Adam's most recent book on threat modeling.
Yeah.
He has multiple books. He's wonderful.
He's the, for those who don't know, he's basically the father of threat modeling. Developed Stride while he was working. It was at Microsoft, right? He was at Microsoft.
Yeah, he was at Microsoft.
Yeah.
He says, I did not invent threat modeling. I just might have popularized it a bit. Because of course he's understating everything. Briefly, if you've never heard of threat modeling, it is essentially it's an activity that you do during, ideally, the design phase. I'd rather a late threat model than no threat model, but that's the best time. And then you have a meeting with basically a security person, one of the technical people, ideally the tech lead, the head dev, something like that on the team, and then a business representative, so the product owner, the business requirements person, the person that understands like the purpose of why we're building this system. Mm-hmm. And you talk about exactly what Gavin said. So what are we doing here and what could go wrong? And you come up with a list of threats that actually concern you. And then to do it correctly, you come up with fixes for all the ones that you feel matter and have some sort of likelihood of happening. So for instance, an asteroid could hit Canada and destroy our whole country, and then our app would go down. Yes, it would, but I don't think I can fix that. So let's talk about the other threats we discovered. Although I did have someone point that out in a threat model once, and after we talked about it enough, what he was actually concerned about was that all of our backups were only on site at HQ in one place, and they weren't distributed, geographically distributed. And he had a really genuine concern that if something happened to that building, every single thing in the company would be gone. So we came up with another backup across Canada, and that actually was really great because years later, there was an active shooter in Ottawa one day. We all got locked in our building. It was really scary. And it turned out it was one person with mental illness who killed one person. But what it seemed like was that there were because at the time we didn't know, it seemed like maybe there were multiple shooters, that there was some sort of coup d'etat happening. And like, if they had burned down our building and we only had one copy of everything, then that could have been very bad, right? Like, and everything turned out as okay as it can be, like, despite the one death. No one else got hurt. Everything was okay, but things happen, right? There is so I kind of want to do the question that's in the chat. Yeah. But first, I want to make sure that we're done the topic of threat modeling, because I bring up the topic 4 times in the book. It's not a threat modeling book, but when you talk about design, you have to talk about threat modeling, right? Because it's one of the ways you make sure it's secure.
I appreciate that you do talk about threat modeling, because I think it's something that kind of goes by the wayside in a lot of cybersecurity textbooks, or they'll like just leave a little footnote and they'll just, all right, moving on. What do you... So this was really brief when you mentioned threat modeling, which is great because it gives somebody, something to Google next. How do you approach threat modeling in the other sections of your book? Do you go into detail later in the book, or do you highlight different areas of threat modeling?
I talk about the 4-question frame and how
Mhm.
that's a good way to get started, with the idea that if you want to go down that path more, you can. I
Yeah.
also, so later in the book, so there's 3 sections in the book, and the first section, which is what we are finishing today, is agnostic secure coding advice. So how to build secure software, but as it applies to any language or any technology. So it's generalized. So for instance, input validation can apply in any language, but you do it very differently in one versus another.
Yeah.
And then in the second part of the book, I get very specific. So I deep dive into JavaScript, into Java, into C, C++, etc. I talk about exactly how to secure a WebSocket versus a serverless app. And I really dig in on purpose. I also cover different types of vulnerabilities, things like that. So then the third part of the book is the system development lifecycle. And I
Mhm.
talk about the different phases. And it doesn't matter if you're doing agile or waterfall, everyone has to do design, right? And so in design, I talk about what it's like to attend a threat model, how you should prepare as a software developer, what the experience is going to be like, what the outcome is. And so I did the secure system development lifecycle as a software developer would experience it, and so that they can fully participate. Whereas my first book, I talked about it as though you're the AppSec engineer running those events, and because it's a lot more work, right, than having them happen to you. And so I get into slightly more detail there, but I think that if you want to learn threat modeling, I would look up Adam Shostak's 4-question frame, which, just a second, I'm just going to put in the chat, Adam Shostak's 4-question frame for threat modeling. A second, and I'm going to 4-question frame for threat modeling. And I spelled it slightly wrong. So imagine the word question is correct. But if you Google that, you will find it. And it's a short paper. So Adam loves writing extensive, in-depth white papers. But this one is much shorter. And it's the idea so that you could just dive right in and do a threat modeling thing right away. Another thing you might want to consider is, a second, I just got it this week. Context and cringe. This is about privacy and about threat modeling, from what I understand, and it helps. It's a board game. It's supposed to be extremely fun, and it helps you learn about privacy and threat modeling by asking questions and playing a game together. And apparently, it's like a fit of giggles every time, and it's all ages. Children can play. So
You should do a stream of that. Just everybody who commented on the book is in a room, and we're just playing that.
I think that would be fun. I
Yeah.
have a game that I made called AppSec Antics, which is like Cards Against Humanity, except for instead of being homophobic and sexist, I make fun of cloud security and bug hunting and other, like, all the complications of our industry.
Yeah.
So that is,
AppSec antics.
yeah.
Nice.
But I really want to answer the question in the chat from Amar.
Yeah, let's do that.
So what would you recommend to someone who's about to graduate and wants to get into InfoSec? Should I complete certificates, or can I get a job without that? And I have a blog post that I'm giving you a link to, Amar. So this is my answer to try to help people who are trying to get into information security, because I literally get asked this not every day, but usually at least once a week. And the first thing I think you need to do is figure out what cybersecurity job makes the most sense for you, right?
That was
Gavin?
exactly what I was going to say. The first thing you got to figure out is, what is it you want to do? Usually when I'm mentoring people, I kind of walk them through and say, what makes you want to get into cybersecurity? Do you want to defend things? Do you want to break into things? Do you want to figure out secrets that people can't, they think they're hiding, right? Forensics, surprisingly fun. I got into some of my cybersecurity through doing network forensics, and I had to learn a lot of that on my own. And I was just curious, like, how do the numbers on the wire turn into a PDF file on a computer or a virus? And then what do I do with that information? How do I carve that out? I actually got a workshop on my channel that is open source network forensics. One of the things that I found very frustrating, I don't know if you've come across this, but when it comes to tools like Wireshark, I'll see the same thing with Burp Suite and other tools that are really popular, but I read like 3 Wireshark books, and every single book, it'll tell you everything about Wireshark, except how to actually use it on an investigation. It's like learning everything about a piano. Like, here's what the pedals do, here's the physics of the strings, and you walk out of that class knowing everything about a piano except how to play the damn thing. And so I'm like, okay, so if my boss breaks into my office and says, hey, an incident happened, we don't know exactly what went on, but we have a full packet capture, figure out what happened. Like, how do you answer that? And so I found one book that actually went over it. It's Tracking Hackers Through Cyberspace. I highly recommend it, by the way.
Cool.
But it goes over, why are you even looking at the wire in the first place, right? Like, you need some sort of triggering event, because it's not just a needle in a haystack. It's multiple needles in multiple haystacks. And you can spend a long afternoon looking at an hour's worth of time in a PCAP file. Like, it is ridiculous how much information is traveling over the network all at once. And especially if you're capturing all of it, then you got to figure out what you're looking for, how you know you find it, things of that nature. So highly recommend it.
Awesome.
What else do you advise from your blog post?
So figuring out first which job is right for you. And you need to figure that out based on your personality traits, your skills, the things you enjoy. Mm-hmm. If you're absolutely amazingly awesome at something, but you hate doing it, that doesn't sound like the right job for, as far as I'm concerned, for you. So the next step would be, in my opinion, is finding a professional mentor. And you can do this in a variety of ways. I run a mentoring program on social media, on my social media, every Monday. And I'm going to put this in the chat. It's Cyber Mentoring Monday. And I just use this hashtag to try to help people find each other. I do not find you a mentor. I am the world's worst matchmaker, as it turns out. This is like my third or fourth mentoring program. And I'm a bad mentor, I'm a bad matcher, but I'm really good at connecting people. And so finding a professional mentor to help guide you. I have mentors. Join learning communities. So for application security, OWASP is favorite, yeah. Right? There's so many different information security communities you can join. There's also communities for different types of people. So for instance, for women, there's Women's Society of Cyber Jitsu. There's Women in Security and Privacy. There's WOSEC, Women of Security. There's different groups. There's Blacks in Cyber. There's all sorts of groups where maybe you might feel like you're more at home. And I absolutely encourage you to join multiple communities.
Yeah, you can find them on Meetup. You can find them just like they usually have a local Facebook page or a local Twitter or something of that nature. 2600 and DC or DEF CON groups, I would also recommend. Regardless if you want to do attack or defense, I still point investigative journalists towards 2600 because it's that type of community as well. As somebody who does mentoring, it's a little difficult to find a mentor if you're nervous and you don't know the questions to ask. So showing up and saying, how do I hack something or how do I secure something is kind of not the right way to go about it. So start with, hey, I'm interested in cybersecurity. I'm exercising my options. I'm not quite sure what I want to do. I kind of want to go in this direction, but I also kind of want to go in this direction. Can you help me figure out what the options are? Because you have threat hunting, you have blue team, so actually securing stuff, that's going to be more your firewall stuff, logs. You have forensics, you have red team and pen testing. You also have GRC, which is a less technical role. I had a mentee. She was a teacher at a charter school for about 4 years and realized that wasn't getting her ahead in life. And so she wanted to hop into cybersecurity. She had budgeted about 2.5 years to go to school, local community college, and figure stuff out. And then we spent about an hour and a half sitting down, and she learned so much about what was out there because she didn't even know the questions to ask in the first
Yeah.
place. But once she knew what was out there, then we could point her in the right direction and say, hey, here's some communities. Like WeSys is another one that's really good for women in cyber. Really like that one. Also look for like conferences. Usually there's small local conferences that are much easier to go to than like the big ones like DEF CON, which has a stronger price tag to it. And the local conferences will also usually have a student discount or like a first timer discount, or they'll have free events. So take a look at that.
Oh, absolutely. Everything Gavin said. The blog post continues. And so if you are listening and not watching, I put the link, I'll just put the link up again for a second, but there's more. So like learn the skills required for the job that you want. And I talk about how to do that. You know, if you already have a job in IT, volunteer to help the security team with different projects. Become a security champion if you're a software developer, if that's an option. Tell everyone you know that you want to transition to your new career, because you might not realize, just like someone at the barbecue was like, yeah, I want to switch into cybersecurity. And that happens to me all the time because I talk about work a lot, right? So the list goes on and on and on about how to show that you have experience, how to get your first experience, et cetera, applying for the job, even if you don't feel ready, et cetera. And so I built the blog post and I've updated it over many years to try to make it the best it can be. So hopefully that helps people. But there was another question that was in the chat, just a second. And it was from AABITOD. I don't know how to say that, but I don't have a lot of coding experience, but I want to be elite in AppSec and AI security. What can I do? And that is a hard question. So for AppSec, I don't know what you feel, Gavin, but if you can code, it's easier to do AppSec. You just understand better. It's like having a secret language that you understand that the rest of the AppSec team or security team doesn't understand. It's helpful, but it's not, I don't think, absolutely necessary.
I started pen testing applications as a senior pen tester before I knew what an API was. It's a little embarrassing. So my background, again, was from networks, the network infrastructure, network security side, but I needed to do app pen testing. There's a lot more app pen testing, and I just got really good at it. But I didn't know all the vernacular and how everything worked. I just saw, here's inputs, change those inputs. Here's weird outputs. Let's follow that thread and see what happens. So you don't have to be elite at application coding. You don't have to be elite at everything. You just need to know how to put pieces together, kind of like a complex puzzle, because that's really what we're doing. Actually, what we're doing is we're taking a test without an answer key and hoping we get it right. Because if we get it wrong, it's a breach. It's a problem. So when it comes to AppSec, it's a lot easier to teach developers security than security to developers, or sorry, development to security people. And so if you want to get into AppSec, learn coding, learn how to develop basic applications. And the thing that I always recommend is build a web app. You want to build what's called a CRUD web app, CRUD. That's create, read, update, delete. It could be as simple as a blog. One of the ones that I point to is Tornado. Tornado is a Python library for building websites, web applications, basically. And so they have examples of web applications. They have one that's kind of an instant message chatbot. They have another one that is just a basic blog website. Take a look at that code and understand how applications are structured and what you're really trying to do. And that goes for anything, really. Like, figure out what it is you're trying to do in the first place. Because then you need to learn things like the MVC architecture, which is model, view, controller. There's the 3-tiered architecture as well, which is tied into that, which is you have the user interface, you have the application server, and then you have the data server on the back. So once you learn some of these things, even if you're not a huge coder, it makes it easier to conceptualize how an application works in your mind. And this is true for thick clients, for web applications, for mobile applications, very similar across the board. You'd be surprised how many mobile applications are just websites with a fancy skin on it, or Discord and Slack. They're built off of Chromium. They use Electron, which is essentially a web app that's in a browser that is designed to look like a desktop application.
So I think Gavin has a lot of really good ideas, but I'm going to cheat and tell you I've built courses that are free on the internet about how to build an AppSec program.
Yes.
And I sold my previous company, so all the courses could be free. So if you go to academy.semgrep.dev, there's a bunch of courses there. And so I put the first course. So there's 3 courses you can do. There's a secure coding course. All of it's free. And they just add you to their newsletter. And their newsletter is not so bad. It's once a month. And like you can unsubscribe if you need to. But essentially thousands and thousands of people. So you might not believe this, Gavin, but when the courses cost money, I actually had more students. Because people, I guess, just really don't want to join a newsletter. But that's fine. That's fine. So there's that. There's my first book, Alice and Bob Learn Application Security, and that can help you learn how to do that job as well. I think I put the .ca Amazon link, but if you just look up Alice and Bob Learn Application Security, you'll find it's for sale everywhere.
Yeah.
People still buy it. So that can help you. And then finding a mentor and doing the other things and the how to get into AppSec or how to get into information security, just apply it to AppSec. So going to your local OWASP chapter or going to the virtual chapter meetups, which you can attend from anywhere in the world if you have internet. Thank you to Jerry Hoff and the team that does that made the virtual chapter, right? So there's a ton of options for you to learn to work in application security. But I think, did you see, Gavin, the question from Christopher Peters? So
I was going to bring that up, yeah.
So where would you focus your AppSec efforts in an organization that doesn't have a ton of budget for tools? What to do about vibe-coded apps? So first of all, I'm reading these out loud because some people will just listen to this and they won't be able to see the thing that's on the screen. And sometimes people are like, Tanya, why do you do that? I'm like, it's for people later.
No, I appreciate that you do that because I have seen recordings of presentations where somebody will ask the presenter a question. You can't hear the question, you just start hearing the answer. So having somebody vocalize what is being asked helps so much because now you can kind of put into context what the question is so that you understand the answer.
My pleasure. I've been trained. I've had people tell me to do it. So focusing my AppSec efforts in an organization that doesn't have a big budget for tools, the first thing I would want to do is do an inventory and a quick assessment on as many apps as I can. So knowing what you need to protect is key. And as you're doing your inventory, finding out, like, has this ever had a pen test? Has this ever had a scan? What is going on here? There are a bunch of free tools that you can get. So you can get a free static analysis tool. You can get a free dynamic application security testing tool like Pew Pew, as I joke. There isn't a free software composition analysis tool that is very good at this point, unfortunately. But you can use dependency track and dependency scan. They're a bit out of date. Instead, I would use Cyclone DX because basically the guys, Jeremiah and Steve, that were doing dependency track and dependency check have been much more active. And a whole bunch of people have been active on Cyclone DX, which I'll put in the chat. Cyclone DX, which is an SBOM tool, a software bill of materials tool, but it does also track vulnerabilities for you. So that's helpful. But essentially, if you could get a quick scan done to see which apps are absolutely terrible, which apps are kind of doing okay, and which apps look pretty good, then you can know where to focus from there. That's where I would start. Do you have tips on where you would start, Gavin?
Yeah, first I got to call out dependency check. You even mentioned in this chapter about supply chain attacks and security considerations, so we can get into that later. But dependency check, I always recommend to people just understand what's going on in your downstream systems because you're building your app usually on somebody else's code. And so you need to make sure that their stuff is secure as well, or at least you have the most secure version. Actually, Tanya, you have a story in here about Log4j where that just became a nightmare for security people because every Java app used Log4j. And as soon as somebody discovered an exploit that led to RCE, now you have millions of applications that are accessible on the internet that are vulnerable to RCE, critical security finding, right?
Remote code execution, for those of you that don't know, that means that your phone rings, but it also means basically anyone in the world could go to a site that had this and just add some text into the URL. And if they're vulnerable, what would happen is they would then have access to the server that web app was living on and be able to execute code, like write their own code onto the server and have it run locally behind your firewall. That's literally the most terrifying thing in the whole world from a software security perspective, to have someone else controlling your server behind your firewall. And you didn't have to log in to do it. You didn't have to do some really fancy, extensive research. You could copy and paste crap off of Pastebin into the URL and you could get in. And since hopefully most apps are logging, this is my mom.
I like the pouty face, like.
All apps should be doing logging, and log4j so is logging for Java, just like there's log4net, etc., which weren't vulnerable. So then all of them were running it, or almost all of them, and most versions were quite vulnerable, unfortunately. The maintainers worked really hard to issue fixes, but it took a while, and it ruined my whole Christmas. It ruined many people's Christmas because it came out December 21st in 2021, and it just sucked.
Yeah, I had to deal with Configure back in the day, and it got patched in October, but we didn't have our updates set until December, and we got hit. It became a whole nightmare. Welcome to security. We're not trying to discourage you. This is fun. It's fun time, especially when you don't sleep. Kidding. But there is something that I want to help answer for Christopher here. Is there's two metrics that I usually use when communicating to customers about this exact topic. The first is maturity models. Maturity models, you have level 1 through 5. 1 is kind of ad hoc, where we just figure out what we're doing when we need to do it, fly by the seat of your pants. 2 is managed, so we kind of know what we're doing, but nothing's written down. 3 is documented, so we know what we're doing and it's written down, so we have some consistency. And then 4 and 5 are optimizations, right? So 4 is more qualitative analysis, 5 is quantitative analysis. You make some nice, pretty graphs, and it kind of comes down to how mature your system, your environment, or your program is. The other thing that I would point to, that ever since I found out about this at Blue Hat a couple of years ago, I've been talking about it nonstop. It's the DFIR hierarchy of needs. Somebody wrote a fantastic blog post saying that we need a DFIR hierarchy of needs. And if you look at it, it's very similar to Maslow's hierarchy of needs. You need to figure out the bottom rung first before you move up to the next level. I always try to get my customers up to level 3 in the maturity model, and I always try to get them up to level 4 in the DFIR hierarchy of needs. So the first 4 levels are, first, you need to know what you have. What are your assets, your inventory? And that's what Tanya was kind of talking about. Next, you want to do some telemetry, like just get some information so that you can see what's going on in the environment. And then after that, detection. Okay, we can see what's going on in the environment, can't make heads or tails of it, versus we can see what's going on in the environment and we can tell something bad is happening, or something important is happening, right? We're seeing CPU usage spike. We're seeing all sorts of memory overflows. What's going on? Let's dig into that. And then that's where that level 4 is, which is triage. And that's where you can actually start responding to the detection events. So all I can do is tell you what ideal is, and then you're not quite there, but there's somewhere along that path from where you are today to that ideal that you just need to try and nudge along to. And eventually you are going to hit a point. You're going to hit a point where you don't have enough budget, you don't have enough resources, you don't have enough technical know-how in order to do some of that stuff. And honestly, sometimes you just got to do the best you can. But as far as free resources, I would point to those two as being able to have conversations, see if you can get a little budget freed up. But like Tanya said, do your dependency check your SBOMs. If you're using NPM audit is actually pretty good. And then just do periodic testing in your environment just to keep an eye on what's happening. Because if you can't see it, you can't fix it.
I think this might be a link to the DFIR hierarchy of needs. Is that?
That's it. Yep.
That's it? Okay. So I'm just going to put that on the screen, and I'm not going to say it out loud for those of you listening because it's too long and it'll take me 5 million years to say it.
You can just look up, you could just internet search DFIR hierarchy of needs. The first thing that pops up.
Exactly.
You'll know you're there when you see this triangle with a whole bunch of stuff listed in it.
Cool. I briefly want to explain supply chain and the supply chain security.
Yeah.
So this is a thing that I've been harping on for a long time, that it took. So sometimes you'll see something that everyone else doesn't see, or you don't know how to say it to get everyone else on board with the thing.
Mhm.
But essentially, all the things we use to build and maintain software is part of our supply chain. And any of that part could be attacked, and then it could poison the software we create. So just the same as if we were going to make soup, we wouldn't want to poison tomatoes because then we could have poisoned soup. People might not think about the fact that, the soup is made in a giant pot. And if the pot was contaminated, you could still end up with poisoned soup, right?
Yeah.
A lot of people don't like every single part must be sterilized and safe, et cetera, in order for us to make food. And so if you have an IDE and you install random plugins from random places and not the official marketplace, et cetera, it has a lot of power over your IDE, the thing you're making the code in, and it could add things that you're not aware of, and then you publish your code and problems happen. So the browser you use for testing, the sandbox that you play around in, your IDE, all the settings in your IDE, your CI/CD. So the IDE is the integrated development environment, the thing you code in all day. The CI/CD is a pipeline. It's a piece of software that helps you compile and build your software and move it from environment to environment. So it helps you publish your code. It goes and downloads things from all over the place. And it is the most privileged, powerful system in most organizations. And most people don't even have logging turned on. And so a thing that I would like to see more of is people locking down every single part. And Gavin, I've been working, I wrote a paper and I submitted it to DEF CON, Black Hat,
Yeah.
etc. It has been rejected everywhere.
Ah.
But I've applied to OWASP and we'll see if they'll take it for San Francisco. But the idea is that if we attack the software developer directly, we open up many, many parts of the supply chain in a second. And what has been happening with major breaches over the past couple of years, they'll call it a supply chain attack, but they've actually compromised one developer human being. And they get their credentials, and suddenly they have the CI, they have the dev and QA environment, they have credentials for the cloud, they have all of this stuff because that developer is so powerful. And I was at the barbecue yesterday trying so hard to explain this to someone, and he's like, oh, it's just a host plant app. All it does is manage all of my developer credentials. Instead of using a password manager.
Have you been paying attention to the recent breaches over the last few months?
No, I have not. Tell me.
So many of them. All right. So if you're using Python, you're using usually like pip, or if you're using NPM or Node, you're using NPM as your package manager. Anybody can just upload stuff. So there's been a lot of supply chain attacks that basically start with, like you said, a developer got socially engineered and then their developer creds got leaked. Now the hackers put something in their code, but they were actually the supplier of some library that pushed out to NPM. And now GitHub gets attacked. And so there's a ransom of stuff on GitHub, or from GitHub now, just because of these supply chain attacks. And it's been happening pretty consistently over the last several months. It's always NPM packages for some reason. Another thing that attackers,
it is happening in PyPy and other.
It's happening everywhere.
It's just much worse. And because there's a group called Shai Halud that is specifically focusing on NPM, and they're quite monstrous. Sorry to cut you off.
No. You're right. You're right. Like you're harping on it because it's true. And now all of a sudden chickens come home to roost. And this is kind of where we have to deal with stuff. And especially, Chris, just because you mentioned vibe coding, LLMs will sometimes hallucinate package names. And so what attackers had done was actually look at what the most statistically likely hallucinated package names were. If they didn't exist, they created them. And so now you're vibe coding, it asks you to download packages. Now you're downloading malware straight to your system. So it's really fascinating how a lot of this is happening, because there's so many pieces of software built on software built on software. And you got to think about these downstream things. Actually, some of the notes that I took while I was reading this book was one of the common findings we would identify is sub-resource identifiers are missing. So if you have a website and you're pulling like jQuery or Bootstrap or something from another network,
Don't use jQuery.
Maybe it's yeah. What was it?
Don't use jQuery. It's so insecure.
Yeah, but I mean, if you're pulling code from another server, like a content delivery network or something like that, you need to make sure that the code that's running in the user's browser is the exact same code that you're expecting to run. So what you should do is create a hash or an identifier for the code before it's ran in the user's browser. And so that's a sub-resource identifier, an SRI. There we go. So you want to do that. You want to keep an eye out for vibe-coded apps. Vibe-coded apps tend to use a lot of libraries, a lot of dependencies, which is kind of weird because they'll just use, oh, I need to download a library and it'll do like this one thing. Sometimes you have to tell it, hey, I want you to use as few libraries as possible because you don't even need the library for that one thing. And then it'll actually kind of correct itself. But for those who, actually, Tanya, have you heard of Gell-Mann amnesia?
I don't think so.
It's something that was coined by Michael Crichton, the guy who wrote Jurassic Park. And it was basically this idea of, say you're reading a magazine and you come across an article that you're very familiar with the topic, and you're reading this article and you're like, this article's stupid. Why would this magazine even publish this? Like this person has no idea what they're talking about. And then you flip the page and it goes to another article about a topic that you're not familiar with. And you just kind of take it at face value. You'd be like, oh, this is actually really interesting. I didn't know these things before, even though it's the same quality, right? So Gell-Mann amnesia is basically, if you're familiar with the topic, you can call bullshit on it. If you're not familiar with the topic, then you're not equipped to do that. And naturally, we just want to accept that as, okay, this is good enough. Vibe coding kind of does that, where people who are not familiar with software practices, people who are not familiar with code and things that can go wrong in code, conventions, fall victim to this all the time. And so this is where it's important. Even if you're going to vibe code an application, you need to understand how code and how software is developed, conventions, things of that nature.
So that is actually a really perfect way to explain one of the risks of vibe coding. So vibe coding, for those of you that are unaware, basically it means having the AI basically make a complete app for you. It does almost all of the work. You are not writing almost any of it yourself anymore. People that do it could be software developers. They could be people that aren't software developers. But the thing is someone who, I have been writing code 32 years. I think I'm almost at 33 years now. That's a long time, right? And so when I look at code, I can see it and be like, oh, that's not right. That doesn't make sense. Or why would you do it like that? Because I've been reading it so long. It's the same way if I read English, because I've been reading it so long. But French is my second language. I could easily make mistakes when I read French and not know it's a mistake. Now imagine someone that doesn't speak any French and they see a French sign. They have no idea what it says. And if the sign looks official and there's a big arrow, they're like, I guess I go that way. And what if the sign says death is this way, right? You don't know. And so people that are vibe coding apps, like the gentleman at the barbecue that wanted to do something that would give legal advice, I was like, first of all, you want to understand the problem that you're solving quite well. But if you also don't understand software, you don't understand the risks that you might be creating. There's a meme that was in my newsletter yesterday, and it's a guy with a construction hat on, and there's this house behind him that's terrible looking. It's all uneven, and it looks like it's going to fall apart. He's like, it's called Vibe Construction. I've never built anything before, but look, it's a house, and they're all going to be built like this from now on. because the house could fall on your head and kill you, right? And a lot of people, because it's software, and software literally you can't see it and touch it, people don't realize the risk involved. Because I was trying to explain to the other person at the barbecue, there weren't like hundreds of people at this barbecue, just to be clear. There was like maybe 20 people, but I just talk a lot. I was trying to explain to the guy, a Houseplant app is an app where you make it just for you and or your team at work. And it's not shown to customers. It doesn't touch customer data or any sensitive data. It doesn't touch any sensitive systems. But as he was explaining one of his apps, I'm like, that touches secrets. That authenticates to other systems that are production systems. It's touching things that are dangerous, and it has now become dangerous. It now needs to be secured. And he's like, no, it's just a Houseplant app. I'm like, okay, let me explain what Houseplant means again. And so for the gentleman, Christopher, that asked about securing vibe-coded apps, I have so many thoughts. I'm currently working to build a product that will enforce a lot of the things I'm thinking of, because right now, basically, a lot of people just don't know what to do. If we're not going to follow proper software development processes, if we're not going to let the security team have a chance to look at things, we can't ensure things are safe and do a good job. And so I would say that offering a training for your entire company, and I know I'm biased because I'm starting to give that training literally next week. So take this with a grain of salt. This isn't meant to be a sales pitch, but you have accountants building software that touches your credit card systems, whether you like it or not. That's probably happening. And so having a training that is for everyone in the company that explains, this is a Houseplant app and you can YOLO that crap. And this are the requirements for you to just be doing whatever you want. And it's safe to do so, versus now it's touching other things. Now it can affect other things. Now you've connected it. Now I need to call the security team and I need some permissions. This is why I need permissions. This is why it can be unsafe. These are the steps I can do. So I have a much happier conversation with the security team where things go better, right? And if you can, and you can design this training yourself, right? If you have a security team, tell them you're worried about it. Tell them to make training for you, right? They can do it too. Like, that's how I started giving trainings, because we couldn't afford the secure coding trainer we wanted to hire. So they're like, Tanya, you do it. And I was like, oh no.
I need 3 volunteers. Volunteers for what? I need 2 volunteers. Crap.
Crap. Right. But that is what you need. You need to be able to explain to them the risk and understand when to call the security team and when they don't need to.
OWASP is a fantastic resource for a lot of these, where it goes over pretty much everything that you need to know. And they have cheat sheets, so it's easy to understand. You don't have to go through a whole textbook and reference material. You just follow these cheat sheets, do what they say, understand the concerns, and it helps. So I'm the original author of 2 of the OWASP Top 10 for LLM applications. And so since we started, I think it was 2023, shortly after ChatGPT first came out, where people were actually starting to build applications with LLMs in them. Since that first came out, the team has developed a whole library of stuff. We're talking MCP security, we're talking LLM security, vibe code security. So take a look at the OWASP and the Gen AI project if you're curious about some of the AI stuff. Otherwise, OWASP, their cheat sheet series, 10 out of 10, highly recommend it. There was something else you said that I wanted to touch on. Oh, Houseplant apps. I don't like Houseplant apps. I don't like Houseplant apps because as a hacker, when I'm in a network, the first thing I'm going for is Houseplant apps, because first, they don't have any security. Why do we need security? It's only going to be used internally. And they kind of have this like M&M paradigm, crunchy on the outside, chewy on the inside. So when I'm pen testing a network, that's usually the first thing that I'm going for. And if somebody's going to use username and a password, right, they're probably using that same password somewhere else. So if I get into the Houseplant app, I crack the password now, or there's no anti-automation. You have a section in here about brute forcing. And so say we have our super secure environment that has anti-automation so that people can't just keep trying passwords all the time. And I find your Houseplant app, and it's either connected or you're sharing credentials. Now I can just start brute forcing that. You can't stop me. You're not logging. You need to log more. as Tanya said.
Yes.
She will hunt you down if you don't log. But this is the stuff that we're looking for, is what are the weakest links in your environment? Because even if it's not connected to anything, you're a human and you're sharing information with it. Is it your password? Is it your email? Is it other sensitive information that's in there? It's crazy how much attackers can find just through clever Google searches with your name and your email address. Now put them in your environment and give them more to look for, right?
I totally agree. I think that a lot of people are going to be telling me something is a houseplant app when it's not, because I'm like, oh, it's connected to that. It's no longer just for you then, right? If you're doing this, it's no longer just for you. It's now touching other things, and now we need some safety. And they're like, oh, crap. I think that a lot of companies have a lot of risk happening right now that they're unaware of. A startup that I know, the CEO was fighting with the marketing team quite a bit, and the marketing team just wouldn't do the thing he wanted, and seemed to have forgot he was the boss. So he missed a flight, and he was sitting in the airport just like hanging around. And so he decided he would vibe code a new website and published it on top of the company's real website.
Oh no.
Because he wanted it this way. He had told them to do it this way. They wouldn't do it. He's like, I'll do it. And then they had this huge blow up. And then the marketing team finally was like, okay, well, we'll do more of it. And they rolled back to the other website, but they started doing the things he asked for. And like, I mean, they're kind of lucky he didn't just fire them, because like, quite frankly, if you have an employee that won't do the thing that you want and you've asked repeatedly and they keep on doing it, like, to me, I'm like, maybe you don't need to work here. Because usually, like, when I'm a boss and I ask you to do something, like I'm politely requesting, but it's not really a request, it's an order, right? Oh, okay. So Ben, a houseplant app is a new term for apps that have been vibe coded, but that are only for you at work or your team and doesn't connect to other systems or handle personally identifiable information or have any other sensitive features. So for instance, if there's, a bunch of calculations that you have to do regularly that you repeat, maybe you would make a houseplant app where you just add this and it gives you this, you add that, it does this. It does little things that are just for you and your team that don't touch customer data or anything else. Yeah. And so a lot of vibe coding are houseplant apps where the risk is quite reduced. And so doing an entire application security program cycle on it might not seem worth it from a business perspective. But the question is it actually just for you and your team with really low risk, or is it actually grown into something that's much bigger that is connected to other things, and how to tell people that?
Yeah, look up shadow IT as well, where people start running their own servers in your environment, and because they're not your servers, you don't know they're there. Hey, just a quick comment, because I saw somebody make a note about this. So on all of the platforms, wherever you're watching this, you can just add a comment. If you're watching on LinkedIn, on Twitter, on YouTube, just add a comment. We'll see it, and then we can kind of respond to that. I know that there's not a lot of people on Twitch right now, but feel free to add a comment anyways, and we can discuss from there. But these are great conversation points. Great. I love when the audience participates and they ask questions. Again, this is for Tanya's book, but it's not just for the book. If you want to ask Tanya questions, want to ask me questions, we can talk about AI. I will not shut up about AI, because I've spent so many years warning people about it, and everything that I've warned about has come true. Don't invent the torment nexus. We made the torment nexus from the hit book. Don't invent the torment nexus. It's a thing. It's a thing.
What topic did you want to talk about next? Because there's secure defaults was the next one on our list, but there's, doing important functions on trusted systems, secure allow lists versus block lists. There's a lot of things in this chapter. What would you like to cover next?
I have a lot of stories in that section about readable and audible code. So the first story is...
We need to say what readable and audible code means.
Readable and audible code. It's in the name. It does exactly what it says on the tin. Can you read it? Can you... So, especially with houseplant apps, people will build code that made sense to them at the time, but it's not following standard software conventions. And so when you hand it to somebody else, right? I build an application today, I give it to somebody 2 years from now. One, do I know what's going on? Can I fix the code if there's a problem? And two, I'm handing it to somebody new. Can they understand what's going on? Can they fix the code and keep maintaining and keeping this system up to date? So readable and audible code is when you're building software, you're not just building software, you're not just writing code for yourself, you're writing code for future you and also your coworkers who may or may not even be at the company. And this is also true for personal projects as well. I can't tell you how many times I have used simple variable names because it made sense at the time. And then 3 months later, I come back and I'm like, I have no idea what's going on. Actually, you have a really good story in here about Bob coming across code that he used to have that attitude where it's, okay, I'm writing this code, and if another developer can't understand what I'm doing here, then they're probably not that good of a developer.
Mm-hmm.
And then he was given an application that was basically written the same way. And so he looks at it and he's like, why am I wasting so much time trying to understand this code? Oh, crap. Have I been doing that to people this whole time? It's a thing. It is a thing. Again, I do it to myself all the time. Embarrassing to admit, but here we are. Anyways, the story that I want to tell is I've had customers who have asked me to develop dashboards or systems, applications, houseplan apps, essentially, for them and their business. And I've had to say no. And it's very deliberate because maybe I can build something like this. It makes sense. It runs. It does its thing. But a year from now, 2 years from now, we spent all this time and money building an application. Can somebody maintain it moving forward? And if the answer to that is no, then we need to look at another route to developing this kind of system. Because what happens is if it falls out of maintenance, if it has something like log4j in there, or if it has something that is a vulnerable dependency, or if the dependency itself is deprecated. I mean, with LLMs kind of hoovering up information all over the internet, how many systems that used to be open source have been taken offline, right? And so if you're relying on something like that, you get API calls. The software is not just the code you write, it's the stuff that you connect to. So you're connecting to third-party APIs, or even connecting to your company's system. So if they move from, say, a Windows 10 to a Windows 11 environment, what does that do, right? The company has a new IDP or an identity provider. And so the old one you were connecting to no longer works. Mm-hmm. So how do you handle that? Or how does future person handle that? So these are conversations that you need to have before you start developing an application with a company. The other one was actually kind of funny. And this gets really technical. So in application development, you have two types of functions. You have the caller function and you have the callee function. So if a function calls a function, that is the caller. If a function is being called by another function, that is the callee. And so whenever you put security protections, you need to put it on the callee function, because when somebody else wants to create a new feature and add something and call that same function, then they don't need to worry about the security of what they're doing. They just need to worry about the functionality. So I was doing a code review for an assessment, and they had SQL injection in the callee function. And that was by design. I don't know why it was by design, but they tried to fight me on it. Whatever. Happens. So I love that face, by the way. That was
crappy by design. No.
Well, they didn't want to refactor their whole code because they built it that way. This is why design is so important. Chapter 4. Read chapter 4. Anyways, so SQL injection as a feature, I guess. I don't know. It's weird. As a service. Why not? Everything else is a service. I had a job on Monday. It's an app by Tuesday. Let's go, right? So I wrote that up as a finding. Didn't find any opportunities to exploit. Checked every single caller of that function and found out what that they were doing filtering on everything. And so I still wrote it up as a finding, and they tried to fight me on it. They said, hey, you didn't exploit this. Why is this a finding? I was like, look, Just because I can't exploit it today doesn't mean it's not going to be exploitable tomorrow. The way that you're doing this, all it takes is one more feature, and now you have full SQL injection. So it's going to be a finding until you refactor your code. I know it's a lot of work because you've really dug into this, but you need to know what the risks are. I'm like a doctor. I'm just here to tell you the risks. What you do with it after that, if you want to make a business decision and say you accept the risk, that's your prerogative. I just have to tell you what's there. And so a couple months later, a coworker came up to me and they said, "Hey, did you work on this application?" I said, "Yeah, absolutely." And they're like, "Well, the customer's pushing back on this finding, and I don't know. I'm doing the retest. I don't know what to say to them because we still can't exploit it. Like, I don't know what to do there." And I'm like, "Well, here's the problem." And I walked them through the problem, and they said, "Oh, well, they also wanted me to test this new feature, and this new feature has SQL injection. So let me take a look at the code." And sure enough, they saw in the code that the caller was not doing the filtering that it needed to before it was calling the SQL injection as a service. And so it sounds dumb. It is dumb, and it happens all the time. But this is why you need to have good, clean, readable, audible code so that you understand what's going on in the application. And you need to make it as frictionless as possible for any new developer and for any new feature to be put in there. So make sure you have your security on the function that is being called, the callee function, so that you don't have to worry about that. You don't have to start digging into the functions that you're calling to see if you have to add additional security onto it. And actually, one of the sections that we kind of skipped over, which is fine, secure by defaults. And it's all about reduce the friction to maintain security. Now, security, it's always a sliding scale between be totally secure. If you want total security, unplug your PC, throw it in an office, lock the door, never connect it to the internet. But that's not usable. So the other side of that is usability. If you want it completely usable, there's no security, right? SQL injection as a service. Super usable, not secure. So there are ways that you can apply security in such a way that makes it seamless for users. Think HTTPS everywhere. Think multi-factor authentication. Think, and I'm so glad Wi-Fi companies started doing this. When you buy like a home router, it has a default password that is a somewhat complex enough password on the router itself. So you don't have to go in and configure anything. You just look at the router, you type in the password, and you're in. Because in the past it was, oh, well, it has no security by default and you have to add it later. Well, not everybody's technical. My grandmother's not technical. She's not going to do that. Yeah. So
I hear you.
Have you, I don't know. I had to read a lot of papers when I was in grad school. Tanya, I don't know if you came across this one. Have you read Why Johnny Can't Encrypt?
No, I haven't. Okay.
For those on the call, sorry, this is a live. I'm so used to like doing Zoom calls and stuff like that. For those on the live, so Why Johnny Can't Encrypt is actually a really seminal piece of work talking about usable privacy and security. You'll even hear, especially in the crypto space, talks at DEF CON, talks at OWASP, talks at B-Sides, kind of along that same theme, like why Johnny still can't encrypt. And it's this idea of we want to do security, but it's really difficult to do security. So Why Johnny Can't Encrypt talks about, what's it called? Email security, like encrypted emails. So encrypted emails is really difficult because now you have to deal with public key cryptography. You have to have a private key. Your friend has to have a private key. You share public keys. And already I see eyes glaze over when I'm talking to non-technical people about that. Even technical people to an extent, right? Because key management is not something that we want to do. But it goes over like how difficult usable security is. But there are things that we can do. And if we can do them, when we can do them, we should maintain secure defaults so that security is something that people don't have to think about.
I want to add on to one thing that you said.
Yeah.
So just because you can't exploit it doesn't mean another malicious actor wouldn't be able to exploit it. I remember explaining that during a pen test. I'm like, yo, I've been a pen tester 1 year. You think I'm the best pen tester you've ever met? I assure you I am not. Writing exploits is not my jam. But there are people where that is what they live and breathe. And so I'm telling you, I found this hole. I'm not good enough in the 2 days that you gave me with 25 other tasks to exploit it, but someone that's determined will get it. So you've been told, do as you wish. The other thing I want to mention is later in the book, we talk about polymorphism, inheritance, object-oriented programming. So if you are doing object-oriented programming, the same callee and caller thing applies. The parent object, the main class that every object is taken from, especially if you do inheritance, it absolutely must have the most secure lockdown version of whatever the thing is. If there's a bug there and you inherit it down, you're just making a mess all the way.
Troubleshooting is a nightmare.
I talk about that quite a bit. I talk about abstraction, all the other things. It gets quite complicated. So if you're doing object-oriented programming, if I could appeal to you to read that part of the book, it's later on. I think it's chapter 8 or 9. But if you could review that, if you're doing OOP, that would be really great. Oh, there's so many good things, Gavin. Did you want to add more?
Not to that section. I think here's the thing that I really appreciate about your book, though, is it's accessible and it covers a lot of topics. And especially these first 4 sections, you don't have to know everything about Java. You don't have to know everything about Go. You don't have to know everything about C#. Like, these are fundamental pieces of software security. And the way that you lay them out, there's certain areas where you just kind of list stuff out. Read this book, go into a meeting with your security team, go into a meeting with your development team and say, hey guys, are we paying attention to this? Just start there. Are we paying attention to this? And you'll be surprised. Some areas, yeah, absolutely. Other areas might not even be a concern, but there are some that you'll probably find that the answer is no, but we should. You have a story later on in the same chapter talking about important functions on trusted systems. And your story is with Alice, where Alice did a capture the flag, CTF, for those who are in the know. Like it's a secret. Where she found an SQL injection in an application, but she found it right next to her manager. And her manager is like, I need to step away for a second. She's like, oh, where are you going? She's like, I need to make sure we don't have this in our environment. Because developers, and this is
it really happened. It really happened. And the programmer ran away and she's like, we had it and I fixed it in like 6 apps. I stayed up all night fixing it across my entire org. Oh my God. What's next, Tanya?
Tanya, I actually want to get your opinion on this, because it was, I think 2 years ago at this point, OWASP, they tried to create like a dev day. It was a day for developers, but they didn't have a lot of turnouts. They canceled it.
Yeah, I was one of the people they canceled. I was so sad.
Yeah, we know what we're talking about in the cybersecurity space, but for some reason, we're not getting that crosstalk with the developers. So I keep having to educate developers and say, here's OWASP. It's designed for developers. And they're like, I've never heard of that before. Why not? Why are we not having those conversations? I feel that I need to start attending developer conferences more than cybersecurity conferences, because we talk about this all the time. Like, if you have a chance to go to DEF CON, first, go to DEF CON. Second, go to Hacker Jeopardy at DEF CON. It is so much fun. It's exactly what it sounds like. It's Jeopardy, hacker topics, but we talk about this stuff all the time. It's a game. We have DEF CON kids. They learn about this stuff, but developers, people who are responsible for building multi-million-dollar applications, don't. And we need to fix that crosstalk. We need to be able to have these conversations with people who are not normally in our spaces.
So I want to push back slightly on. So yes, I agree that we want developers to know these things, but what's happening is they go to university and college and learn to be a software developer, and security is not covered.
Yeah.
And the universities and colleges. So my first book, I wrote it with the hope that it would be taught in universities and colleges, and they're all like, no, you can come and teach so I have a college diploma. I don't have a degree. I don't have a PhD, and therefore I don't fit into the university pyramid scheme. Yeah, I said pyramid scheme, and I mean it. I'm not kidding. They won't hire and pay a living wage. They pay less than minimum wage. Kevin, I got offered $3,500 and $4,000 to teach for an entire semester, 20 hours a week, and as an adjunct professor.
Yeah, don't do adjunct. Adjunct is terrible.
And that's Canadian dollars. So that's like 2,000 and change American dollars.
Yeah, it's
to
like 12
teach for
bucks.
4 months, 20 hours a week, have them own my intellectual property, mark exams, create tons of content. So there's like a million more hours than
hold office hours.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And they're like, oh, well, you don't have a PhD, so you're not a real human being, basically. And so then you can't get paid more. And it's completely ridiculous, right? And so they're like, well, you have to get a PhD. I'm like, who's going to give me a PhD in AppSec when I wrote the book? You're going to teach me? And the guy looked like he wanted to crawl under the desk and die. Actually, but I've reached out to many of the universities. I've offered to create like the learning lessons and stuff. And they're just like, you have to show up in person. We're going to pay you nothing and you're going to like it. And so that's why I've been teaching the book for free.
Yeah, there's a local community college. I know the director over there, and they are trying to kind of break out of that mold because there's a tradition behind it. Unfortunately, it's just you got to fit within that tradition, and if you don't, they don't care. It's very frustrating. But it also kind of reminds me of the author of Brew, which is like a package manager for Mac. Couldn't get a job at Google because he couldn't do a whiteboard interview. And he's like, look, I wrote software that most of your developers are using. It's functional, it's usable, like it's popular, but I can't pass your stupid whiteboard interview, so I can't work for you. That's stupid. And it is a problem because when you have these structural systems in place, it's actually really difficult. And I think this is a good time for us to get on a soapbox if you want to join me.
Oh, I do.
Common question, and I think somebody alluded to it earlier: degrees, certificates, experience,
certifications.
How do you certifications? How do you categorize those three? Because I have my opinions, but if somebody was asking, hey, should I get a degree in cybersecurity? Should I get cybersecurity certifications? Should I just hop right into the workforce? Like, how would you answer that?
My answer has completely changed over the past 12 months. So having a computer science diploma, I know how to write a compiler, then I had to write a parser. Years later, it helped me understand all the different areas of computers so I could be a very well-rounded information security professional. And then I was a software developer a long time, and that also helped. And sometimes people are like, how do you know that? It's like, because I've been doing that. This is year 29 of my career, and I was programming for years before that, right? So I'm an unusual case in information security. It will help you be more rounded. But right now, with people vibe coding crap, if you go study computer science for 4 years, and then you graduate, and then there's an accountant that built an app in 10 minutes using Claude, I don't know if your computer science degree is going to be helpful in the way that it was in the past. I do think that I'm going to be a superior vibe coder than a person that's never coded before, for sure. But because the tools are changing so drastically, and because academia is always a million years behind, I don't think I could advise on paying and going into huge debt in order to do that right now. I think that if you're able to get a job in industry, just jump in and get a job. It's really hard to do that without experience. So getting a mentor, volunteering on open source projects so you can get some experience, and then trying to find a job, I think might be a better path right now. I think right now the path is even more difficult than it was before, unfortunately. I also just point blank greatly fear. Every single person is looking at the vibe coded code and they're like, looks good to me. Rah!
Right. Because you don't know. You don't have that discernment.
Yeah. And so what I think is that we need a completely new set of security tools. I think all the old ones are going to be in the garbage. I think in a year from now, no one's going to buy a stack analysis tool. I think we're going to have a completely new, or I hope we're going to have a completely new tool set. And ideally, those will be like kind of built in like guardrails just all the time so that these vibe coders are more secure. And I think that software developers' jobs are going to change from what it is now to something much more advanced and different, like kind of like an orchestration of the AIs and designing of bigger tools and things. And some people will be left behind and will go retrain and do something else. And some people will rise to that occasion. And I think that going to university right now for IT might be counterproductive when things are changing literally every month. Like I remember going to my meetup and everyone being like, OpenClaw, OpenClaw, OpenClaw.
Yeah.
And yesterday someone was like, blah, blah, OpenClaw. I'm like, no, it's co-work. Don't touch OpenClaw. What are you, crazy? That's
Right. Now people are using Hermes, people are using Pi, it is changing. That's the AI space. This is why I don't follow the AI. Like people ask me like, oh, how do you stay up to date on AI news? I'm like, I don't. I just ignore it because there's nothing that's going to happen in the next 6 months that isn't just a rehash of something that's been happening in the last 6 months. And it's been like that for the last like year and a half. OpenClaw was kind of the big one. Before that, it was like DeepSeek R1 January 2025. Stuff just keeps becoming rehashes of rehashes.
Oh, I think things are going to change. I think that anything that you learn now could be very invalid in 6 months from now. And so working really hard and studying to learn something now, in 6 months, it might not apply.
See, I have a bit of a different
I still want to learn,
perspective.
but be careful.
Yeah.
Okay.
Like,
and then we have to do wrap up, which sucks as if it's been an hour and 45 minutes, Gavin. We could literally be like, we could do a week lecture. Like we could just every hour take a break and then we have like a lunchtime and we could just, you and I could talk all week.
Again, we were just doing a high call, 45 minutes turned into 2.5 hours. Like this is why I have the notes to keep us on track.
It totally worked. Please, though.
Did you want to do wrap up?
Oh, I want to hear your thing, and then we're going to do some key takeaways.
Yeah, I mean, AI aside, it's still useful to learn how some of these systems work. Unless you're going to be a professor or really dig into like the super technical aspects of computer science, I don't recommend computer science. I recommend software development. You can get that as a diploma. Don't go master's level. I have a master's in computer science. They teach you to be a professor. I hated that. Actually, the reason I got so into AI is because I took a data mining class. Data mining and machine learning are like this. It's basically the same thing. Had no idea what was going on the entire time. I literally walked out of my lectures so that I could go to the library and like watch videos on whatever we were supposed to be lecturing about. And I finished that class with a B, finished the final with a B. But if you gave me a piece of clean, formatted, already curated data, I had no idea what to do with it because they taught you, again, how a piano works, but not how to play the piano. So degrees can be useful. Again, do software development if you're going to get into software development. Certifications are useful for introducing you to a lot of topics, but the real value of certifications is showing people that you know at least this level of knowledge. And then as far as whether or not some of this stuff is going to be invalid in 3 months or so, I don't think so. I think the fundamentals are going to stay the same. It's just you're going to be a lot quicker. Something that I point to is how back in the day, you wanted to do web app development. You just needed to know what's called a LAMP stack, LAMP, Linux, Apache, MySQL, and PHP. And that was it. You could build an application. You could get a job. You could get a really good paying job. But now you can't. You can't even graduate as an undergrad in computer science or software development by just knowing those things. Now you have to know Get, but not just Get. Now you need to know infrastructure as code. You need to know CI/CD. You need to know proper programming techniques, architectures. Now it's no longer a LAMP stack. Now you're using Node and Express. You need to do a mean stack or a MERN stack, but even that's out of date. You need to learn Bootstrap, but Bootstrap's out of date. You need to learn jQuery. jQuery's out of date. Now you need to learn CSS, but it's not CSS anymore. It's like Vue CSS or it's some other CSS. There's so much stuff out there to learn right now. And unfortunately, the barrier of entry is getting higher and higher and higher. And I'm not saying this to scare anybody. What I am saying is to just, again, bring you into the conversation. There is a lot, and this is where, as Tanya said, find a mentor. They'll help you navigate this, because everybody and their mother is just screaming into the void, like, oh, you need to do this. I'm so sick of Instagram. I have a horrible addiction to Instagram Reels, by the way. I'm so sick of Instagram ads saying like, oh, if you take my class, you can get $300,000 a year in cybersecurity. And I was like, I've been doing this for decades. I don't have $300,000 a year in cybersecurity. And I know more than most people. Like, that's not to toot my own horn, but the difference between consulting, which is what I do, and somebody who works for even a high-end company like a Facebook or a Google, like, do you want somebody with 5 years of experience, or do you want somebody with 1 year of experience 5 times over? Because that's really the big difference. And I don't want people to feel like they're falling behind. I don't want people to feel like they're failing. I don't want people to feel like there's too much out there. The best time to start was when they were 4. Like, I don't want people to feel that way. You can start now. I've helped people who are well into the mid-career and they want to make a career shift, get into cybersecurity. Totally possible, totally doable. You can make a fantastic salary doing that. Think about your transferable skills. There's stuff that you learned in your previous career. You're moving to your new career. You have skills that still work. People skills are a huge one. You'd be surprised how many technical people don't like to talk. Tangent over. I think that there is a lot of opportunity even through some of the classical routes, but don't feel like there's a stepping stone or a proper way of doing things. Like, I get it, especially if you're in college right now. You know, you were told in grade school, go to grade school, you're going to learn this in junior high. You get it in junior high, you're going to learn this in high school. You get to high school, you're going to learn this in college. You get to college, and they're basically like, you don't even have to show up if you don't want to. But being told, do this, do this, do this your entire life, and then eventually you get to a point where you say, okay, what do I do next? It's like, oh, do whatever you want. It's like, I haven't been able to do that. I have no idea what I want. What do I do? Tell me what to do. Whatever you want. No, find a mentor. Just find a mentor.
Mentors
solve so
can
many
really
problems.
help a lot.
Yeah.
I have had some new mentors recently, and it's been invaluable to hear that I had different options I hadn't realized, or just someone that has an experience that I am working towards, having them share, like, there's actually 3 options, not 2, Tanya. And like, I think this one might be the one for you. Mm-hmm. And sometimes they give me options that aren't something I want, right? But it's just knowing that the things are there.
And you're not going to have just one. You have multiple.
Yeah,
Talk
exactly.
to so many people.
And give back. Be a mentor as soon as you can. Yeah. Even if that means just one session with someone for 1 hour, advising them. I want to quickly answer this question that's off topic. Can you speak about what happened to the OWASP DevSlop show? So that was my first OWASP project. And I was one of the project leaders. And I handed it off to Nancy and Nikki, the other project leaders, so that I could start my company, We Hack Purple, which eventually was acquired and all these things. And then Nikki eventually left the show, and Nancy handed it off to a team in Australia. And basically the team in Australia completely dropped the show. But, you know, after a couple of years of doing a live stream every single Sunday, sometimes you need to move on to new things, right? And so unfortunately, it eventually fell apart. And that's what happens sometimes with open source projects. Although last week I got to spend several days with Franziska Bueller, who was from the OWASP DevSlop show while I was in Vienna. And it was actually like unbelievably lovely to spend time with my project team member again, and my new project team member, Torsten, from the OWASP Top 10 team. So it's funny how it kind of went full circle last week for me. But we now need to do some key takeaways. And Gavin, I'm going to give you a second or two to think about your takeaways. But I would say that some of my takeaways here are, so obviously I'm biased. If you want to create secure software, there are a bunch of options for you, but one of the most direct ways if you're starting from scratch is just to get a copy of my book, because it's the most comprehensive secure coding guide that I'm aware of. And that's why I built it. And for how much it costs versus what you're getting, hopefully you feel it's worth it. and then watch these streams with me every month. I'm really glad we had good attendance this month. I was actually thinking of canceling them because the last 2 months there was such bad attendance. I was like, maybe I just don't need to do these. Maybe people don't actually really want them. So I'm really, thank you. I'm very grateful that all of you showed up. So that was a takeaway from me. I feel like another takeaway is that people are still really struggling with how to get into our industry. And I wish there was a more direct way. When I built the how to do application security courses and I wrote the book, the reason was so that I could help create AppSec engineers. And I'll flash, maybe I'll do like an email after with all of the links of all the things we talked about, including Gavin's YouTube and his LinkedIn, so that you can, because obviously you need more Gavin in your life. That's a key takeaway here for sure. But I feel like I've tried to open the door as much as I possibly can for creating new application security professionals, and for getting into information security in general with like the big, huge, exhaustive blog post with the 12 steps. So I'm going to share those again in an after email. And if you haven't RSVP'd, join my newsletter, which is free, which I'm going to splash on the screen here at newsletter.shehackspurple.ca. It's free, and maybe I'll put them in there too, just in case. But attend these monthly if you want to learn more. This could be the beginning of a long-term relationship if you want it to be. And now I want to hear what Gavin has to say of key takeaways before we wrap up.
So I guess 2 major sections. So from the call, I definitely agree with you. It sounds like there's some people who are still trying to get into AppSec, but there's also people who are in AppSec and trying to have these conversations and figure out how to actually move the needle on cybersecurity in their place. For both, I really appreciate your book because it is approachable. You have genuine stories. Alice and Bob, every single, as I was going through the chapter, I wrote down every single Alice and Bob story just because they resonated with me. You know, these are things that I've also seen, right? Not exactly beat by beat, but it's the same thing across the board. And I love when people are able to share the stories and embarrassing moments that they've had to go through, because it shows that, you know, when it's your turn, you know that you're not alone. So I really appreciated that about the book itself. I would say key takeaways for this: if you learn nothing else, think about secure design. Think about, you know, shifting left your cybersecurity towards the planning phase before you start writing code. Because once you have a better idea of what to look out for and what can go wrong, that 4-question threat model, then it makes it so much easier to do all the things down the road. Make sure that you have code that's audible, that's readable, that you can review, that somebody else can understand, including your future self. Make sure that you have a strong software bill of materials or an SBOM. Do dependency check. Make sure that your dependencies are audited. Make sure that you're not trusting where your dependencies are coming from and you're doing your own independent verification and signing so that you know the dependency didn't change over time. And then I think the big question is the first one that you started with is, how do you know you did enough for your security? And it's a tough question. It really is a tough question, but it's important because sometimes you're not going to be able to do everything. And that's okay. That's just the nature of the world. This is what we have to deal with. But you can do your best and prioritize. Like I said, 2 resources that I usually use to help is that maturity models. It helps kind of get everybody on the same page as far as, you know, how are we doing, scale of 1 to 5, and that DFIR hierarchy of needs, where you kind of get an idea of what your priorities should be. You got to tackle the bottom rung before you start moving up, because if you move up too quickly without really getting a strong foundation, it's going to be like that vibe coded building. It's just going to fall over.
Gavin, is it okay? So first of all, on the screen, I have Gavin's YouTube channel, which is NetSec Explained, like network security. So NetSec Explained. So if you look up that, you're going to find him. And would it be okay if people maybe connected with you or followed you on LinkedIn?
Yeah, absolutely.
Is there anywhere else that they could find you besides those 2 places?
I'm also on X at GT Klondike. I'll paste both of those in here if that helps.
Is it like that?
Exactly. Yeah.
Oh, so how do you get notified of the next show? So you join the newsletter. So you go to newsletter.shehackspurple.ca and you get invited to all of these. And I do a lot of stuff. I also have a podcast. I have a blog. I have silly memes all the time. And so once a month, the newsletter comes out and it tells you all the content I've created in the past month, as well as all the things that are coming up, what I'm building, etc. And all of that is free. Yep. Okay, so that is good. Oh, can we put that? Okay, so I'm going to put all of Gavin's things in the main chat so that everyone has them. I want to make sure that they're on.
Yeah, they wouldn't paste for me, so that's why I sent
Okay,
over.
I'm going to do some quick, fast pasting because I want to make sure that everyone can see Gavin's stuff. I want to make sure that you can follow him because this video, a copy of this will be in the next newsletter for sure. But like, you probably want even more Gavin than that. Like, who doesn't? Oh, Gavin, this has been such a pleasure. You're so amazing. I'm so glad that we met at that content creator meetup so many years ago. And thank you so much for saying yes for this. And thank you for like making a million notes and meeting with me and doing this with me. I really appreciate you so much. And thank you all of the people who attended. I really appreciate you all taking time. 2 hours is a long time. And I appreciate you taking this time to learn like about application security, about my book, about how to build safer software, about both of us. I really appreciate the time and attention of all of you. And with that, Gavin, we have to say goodbye, which is the hardest part of the whole stream.
That means that we got to do this again. But it's been fantastic. Thank you for having me on.
Thank you.
Have a good day, everybody.
Bye, everyone.